No one on the battlefield noticed the moment that changed the fate of the galaxy. Not the warships burning in the sky. Not the soldiers fighting among the shattered buildings. Not even the drones scanning the ruins for survivors. But in the middle of a destroyed alien city, one human medic knelt beside a dying stranger. And unknowingly, he had just saved the most powerful warrior in the galaxy. The war for the planet Carthos had already lasted 8 years. Once it had been a beautiful world, green forests, silver oceans, and cities that glowed at night like stars on the ground. Now it was nothing but ruins. Explosions had turned entire districts into dust. The sky was always red with fire from distant battles between starships. Most people had already abandoned the planet. But one human had stayed. His name was Daniel Reyes. Daniel had once been a soldier in the Terran Expeditionary Fleet. He had fought in dozens of battles across the Orion sector. He had seen too much death. So he quit the army. Instead of carrying a rifle, he carried a medical pack. Daniel now ran a small mobile field clinic, helping anyone he could find on the battlefield, human, alien, civilian, or soldier. To him, it didn't matter what side someone fought for. Pain looked the same on every face. That evening, Daniel was walking through the wreckage of an abandoned city, scanning the area for survivors. His medical drone floated beside him, projecting a faint blue light over the broken streets. Suddenly, the scanner beeped. A life signal. Weak, but still alive. Daniel froze. Drone, mark the source. The drone projected a glowing arrow toward a collapsed structure nearby. Daniel moved quickly. The building had once been some kind of command center, but now it was just twisted metal and broken stone. The signal came from beneath the rubble. Daniel began pulling debris aside. After a few seconds, he saw a hand. But it wasn't human. The skin shimmered faintly in the dark, like moonlight on water. Daniel carefully cleared the rubble until the figure was visible. Then he stopped. The stranger lying there was unlike any alien he had ever seen. She was tall, taller than most humans. Her long silver hair was covered in dust and blood. Her skin had a faint glowing pattern beneath it, like living energy flowing through her veins. Several deep wounds burned across her body, clearly caused by high-energy weapons. Yet somehow, she was still alive. Daniel quickly activated his medical scanner. Multiple internal injuries, severe blood loss, fractured ribs. He frowned. Yeah, you're not walking away from this without help. Her eyes suddenly opened. They were gold. Bright. Sharp. And for a brief second, Daniel felt something strange. It was as if those eyes were studying him, measuring him. Not like a helpless victim. More like a warrior deciding whether he was a threat. Then the strength faded, and she groaned in pain. Daniel gently placed a hand on her shoulder. Easy. Don't move. He opened his medical kit. The tools inside were designed for dozens of alien species. Over the years Daniel had learned how to adapt quickly. He sprayed sealing foam across the worst wounds. The foam expanded, stopping the bleeding instantly. Then he injected a universal pain stabilizer. Her breathing slowly steadied. The alien woman watched him carefully as he worked. You are human, she whispered weakly. Daniel smiled slightly. Last time I checked. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Why, help me? Daniel paused. He had been asked that question many times before. By enemies. By strangers. By soldiers who had tried to kill him earlier that same day. His answer never changed. Because you're hurt, he said simply. That's reason enough. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then something unexpected happened. The alien woman laughed softly. Not mocking. Almost impressed. Strange species, she murmured. Daniel carefully lifted her onto a hovering stretcher drone. Yeah, we hear that a lot. The trip back to the clinic took nearly 20 minutes. All the while, the alien woman remained silent, studying him. Finally Daniel asked the obvious question. Got a name? She hesitated. Then she answered quietly. Lyra. Daniel nodded. Well, Lyra, try not to die before we get there. I just cleaned the surgery table this morning. Her lips curved slightly. Even injured, she carried herself with quiet strength. Daniel didn't know it yet. But Lyra was not just another wounded traveler. She was Queen Lyra Velez, Supreme Commander of the Zerath Dominion, a civilization feared across thousands of star systems. Her fleets had destroyed entire armadas. Her strategies were studied in every military academy in the galaxy. Some called her a conqueror. Others called her a legend. Most simply called her the War Queen. And at that moment, the most powerful military leader in the galaxy was lying on a human stretcher, being rescued by a man who had no idea who she really was. Daniel's clinic was hidden inside an abandoned cargo bunker. It was small, crowded, but alive. Refugees slept on cots along the walls. Medical drones hummed quietly as they monitored patients. When Daniel arrived carrying the tall alien woman, his assistant rushed over. Her name was Maya Chen, a former engineer who now helped run the clinic. She looked at the stretcher. Whoa, that's a new species. Daniel shrugged. New patient. They rushed Lyra into the surgical room. The next 2 hours were exhausting. Her alien biology was complicated. Her bones were stronger than steel. Her blood glowed faintly blue. But Daniel worked carefully, adapting every step. Finally, the last wound was sealed. Lyra was alive. Stable. Sleeping. Daniel leaned back in his chair, exhausted. Maya studied the medical scans. Daniel, whoever she is, her body is incredible. Daniel glanced at the screen. Her cellular regeneration rate was almost unbelievable. She's tough, he admitted. Then Maya zoomed in on something. Beneath Lyra's skin, glowing symbols slowly pulsed with energy. Strange markings. Ancient. Powerful. Daniel frowned. Probably cultural tattoos. But Maya wasn't convinced. I don't think so. Outside the bunker, distant explosions echoed across the ruined planet. The war was still raging. But inside the small clinic, something much bigger had already begun. Because the alien queen who commanded the most powerful army in the galaxy had just been saved by a human medic who believed every life mattered. And when Lyra finally woke up, she would face a question no enemy had ever forced her to consider. What if the weakest species in the galaxy was actually the strongest? The galaxy had feared Queen Lyra Velez for more than a decade. Entire fleets had vanished because of her strategies. Civilizations had surrendered the moment her war banners appeared in orbit. To her enemies, she was not just a ruler. She was a storm. But inside a quiet medical bunker on a forgotten battlefield, the most feared commander in the galaxy slowly opened her eyes. The first thing Lyra noticed was silence. No alarms. No warships. No battlefield. Only the soft hum of machines. For a moment she thought she was dead. Then she saw the ceiling. Simple metal panels. Old lights. Human technology. Her memory returned instantly. The ambush. The betrayal inside her own command fleet. Her escort ships destroyed. Her shuttle shot down. The burning crash through Cartho's atmosphere. She had expected to die among the ruins. Instead, she was alive. Lyra slowly turned her head. A human sat beside her bed, sleeping. His head leaned against the wall, arms folded. The same human who had saved her. Daniel Reyes. The strange medic who had treated her like any other wounded stranger. Lyra studied him quietly. He looked exhausted. Small scars covered his hands. His medical uniform was stained with dried blood. Yet his face was calm. Peaceful. The face of someone who had chosen healing instead of war. Lyra found that confusing. In her empire, warriors were respected. But mercy was weakness. Compassion was a luxury rulers could not afford. Yet this human had risked his life to save someone he didn't even know. Someone who might even be his enemy. For the first time in many years, Queen Lyra felt curiosity instead of calculation. Then Daniel suddenly woke up. His eyes blinked as he realized she was watching him. "Well," he said with a tired smile. "Nice to see you didn't die." Lyra slowly sat up. Her wounds were still painful, but her species healed quickly. "You repaired my body," she said. Daniel stretched his neck. More like convinced it to repair itself. Lyra examined the bandages across her arms. "You have advanced medical skill for a battlefield doctor." Daniel shrugged. "War teaches you fast." For a moment neither spoke. Then Lyra asked quietly, "Why are you still here?" Daniel looked confused. "Where else would I be?" "You are alone on a war planet," she said. "You treat soldiers from both sides. That makes enemies everywhere." Daniel thought about that. Then he simply said, "Maybe. But it also makes friends everywhere." Lyra tilted her head slightly. "Your species thinks strangely." Daniel laughed softly. "Yeah. We hear that a lot." Over the next 2 days, Lyra recovered faster than anyone in the clinic expected. Her strength returned quickly. Her movements became faster, more precise. Daniel noticed it immediately. One morning he entered the clinic courtyard and saw Lyra lifting a supply crate. A crate that normally required 2 humans. She held it effortlessly. Daniel whistled. "Okay, that's definitely not normal." Lyra set the crate down calmly. "My species is stronger than humans." Daniel crossed his arms. "Yeah, I noticed." But something else caught his attention. The way she moved. Every motion was perfect. Balanced. Controlled. Like a trained warrior. Daniel had spent years around soldiers. He recognized the signs instantly. "You weren't just a civilian on that battlefield," he said. Lyra didn't answer. Instead she asked a different question. "Why did you leave the army?" Daniel leaned against the wall. "That obvious?" "Yes." He thought for a moment. Then he answered honestly. "Because I got tired of watching good people die for bad reasons." Lyra watched him carefully. "In war, death is inevitable." Daniel nodded. "Yeah. But sometimes war itself isn't." Lyra frowned slightly. "You believe conflict can be avoided?" "Sometimes." "And if it cannot?" Daniel looked directly at her. "Then you fight, but you remember what you're fighting for." Lyra felt something unfamiliar stir inside her mind. For years she had commanded wars. Battles were numbers. Ships. Strategies. Victory probabilities. But this human saw war differently. He saw the people inside it. That idea was unsettling and strangely powerful. That night the quiet clinic was interrupted by a sudden alarm. Maya ran into the main room. "Daniel! We've got incoming ships." Daniel rushed to the radar screen. 3 warships had entered the planet's atmosphere. They weren't Alliance ships. And they definitely weren't human. Lyra stepped closer to the display. Her golden eyes narrowed. Zerath Dominion warships. Her Empire's ships. Daniel glanced at her. "You know them." Lyra hesitated. Then she spoke slowly. "Yes." Daniel's face darkened. "That's not good." Outside the bunker, the sound of distant engines thundered across the sky. Search drones began sweeping the ruined city. They were hunting for something. Or someone. Inside the clinic, refugees began to panic. Daniel turned to Lyra. "Are they here for you?" Lyra didn't answer immediately. But the truth was obvious. Those ships were her fleet. Her loyal commanders. They were searching for their missing queen. If they found her here, they would destroy everything around them to secure her. Including the clinic. Including the innocent people inside. Lyra realized something uncomfortable. For the first time in her life. Her own army was the threat. Daniel grabbed his rifle from the wall. Not aggressively. Just cautiously. "If those ships find us," he said quietly, This place becomes a battlefield. Lyra looked at the frightened civilians around the room. Children, wounded soldiers, families who had already lost everything. And suddenly she understood what Daniel had meant before. War always had a cost. And today, the cost might be paid by people who had nothing to do with it. Lyra slowly stepped forward, her voice calm. They must not find this place. Daniel raised an eyebrow. And how exactly do we stop a fleet from searching the planet? Lyra looked toward the sky. Her expression had changed. The quiet patient was gone. In her place stood something far more dangerous. A commander. A strategist. A queen. There is a way, she said. Daniel crossed his arms. All right then, mysterious alien lady. What's the plan? Lyra turned toward him. For the first time since arriving at the clinic, her golden eyes burned with the power that had once commanded entire galaxies. If we are going to protect these people, she said quietly, then we will need to do something very human. Daniel frowned. And what's that? Lyra's lips curved slightly. We are going to outsmart an army. The Zirath warships circled the planet like silent hunters. Their scanning beams swept across ruined cities, broken forests, and empty battlefields. They were searching for one thing. Their missing queen. Inside the underground clinic, tension filled the air like a storm waiting to break. Daniel watched the radar screen carefully. 3 alien destroyers were moving closer to their sector. If those ships found the bunker, the clinic would not survive even 10 seconds. The Zirath fleet was known for efficiency. And efficiency rarely included mercy. Daniel turned to Lyra. You said you had a plan. Lyra stood quietly beside the holographic display. Her golden eyes studied the radar patterns with calm precision. For a moment, Daniel forgot she was injured. Forgot she was even a patient. She looked like someone who had commanded armies before. Which, of course, she had. But Daniel still didn't know that. Lyra finally spoke. The search pattern is predictable. Daniel blinked. You figured that out already. Lyra nodded. Military doctrine rarely changes, even across species. She pointed at the hologram. Their drones will reach this district in approximately 20 minutes. Maya looked horrified. That's not enough time to evacuate everyone. Daniel rubbed his chin. So what's your idea? Lyra looked directly at him. We make them search somewhere else. Daniel smiled slightly. Distraction. Lyra nodded once. Yes. Daniel liked this plan already. Humans had always been very good at distractions. Within minutes, the clinic became a controlled chaos of preparation. Daniel gathered several damaged power cores from broken equipment. Maya rewired an old cargo drone. Meanwhile, Lyra studied the battlefield map like a chessboard. Every destroyed building. Every crater. Every abandoned machine. She was calculating something far bigger than a simple distraction. Daniel noticed. You've done this before. Lyra glanced at him. Yes. Daniel chuckled. I figured. Maya finished connecting the power cores to the drone. If this explodes the way I think it will, she said nervously, their scanners will detect it from orbit. Daniel nodded. Perfect. Lyra stepped forward. But we must place it far from the clinic. Daniel grabbed his jacket. Then we better move. The night air outside was cold and silent. Far above, the 3 Zirath destroyers glowed faintly in orbit. Their engines burned like distant stars. Daniel drove an old armored transport through the ruined streets. Lyra sat beside him, watching the sky. You're surprisingly calm, Daniel said. Lyra answered quietly. I have seen worse nights. Daniel believed her. They reached an abandoned reactor facility several kilometers away. The perfect place for a convincing signal. Maya activated the drone. The small machine lifted into the air, carrying the unstable power cores. Daniel stepped back. All right, he said. Moment of truth. The drone disappeared into the dark sky. 10 seconds later, the explosion lit the horizon like a second sunrise. Energy surged upward in a massive electromagnetic burst. Daniel shielded his eyes. Okay, that might have been bigger than expected. Above them, the Zirath warships immediately changed course. Their scanners locked onto the new signal. Just as Lyra predicted. Daniel laughed. They took the bait. But Lyra wasn't celebrating yet. She stared at the warships with intense focus. Her mind was already thinking several moves ahead. Because she knew something Daniel did not. Those ships contained commanders who knew her very well. And if they discovered the truth, everything would change. When Daniel and Lyra returned to the clinic, the refugees cheered quietly. The search drones had moved away. For now, they were safe. Maya hugged Daniel. You crazy genius. Daniel grinned. Hey, don't forget the mysterious alien strategist. Maya looked at Lyra. You were amazing out there. Lyra didn't respond immediately. Instead, she looked around the clinic. At the wounded soldiers. The frightened families. The children sleeping on medical beds. Then she looked at Daniel. You risked everything for people who cannot repay you. Daniel shrugged. That's kind of the point. Lyra felt something shift inside her mind. For years she had ruled through strength. Through fear. Through absolute authority. But this human. He ruled nothing. Commanded nothing. Yet people trusted him completely. And somehow, that seemed more powerful. Several hours later, Lyra stood alone outside the bunker. The sky above Carthos was finally quiet. Daniel walked up beside her. You're leaving soon, aren't you? Lyra looked surprised. How did you know? Daniel smiled softly. You have that look. What look? The my past is catching up with me look. Lyra was silent for a moment. Then she said something she had never admitted before. My life is complicated. Daniel chuckled. I figured that too. Lyra turned toward him. Daniel, if you discovered that someone you helped had caused great destruction. He interrupted gently. I'd still be glad I helped them. Lyra frowned. Even if they were responsible for many deaths. Daniel nodded slowly. People can change. The words struck her harder than any weapon. For the first time in many years, Queen Lyra Valais felt uncertain. Not about war, but about herself. Then suddenly, a massive shadow passed across the stars. Daniel looked up. One of the Zirath destroyers had descended into the atmosphere, and it was heading directly toward the clinic. Lyra's expression darkened. They found us. Daniel grabbed his rifle. Well, guess the distraction didn't last forever. But Lyra placed a hand on his arm. No. Daniel looked at her. Lyra took a slow breath. Then she said quietly, It is time you knew the truth. The warship landed beyond the ruined city. Hundreds of armored soldiers marched out. Their banners glowed in the night. Daniel stared. Okay, that's definitely not good. Lyra stepped forward. Her glowing markings began shining brighter. And suddenly, the Zirath soldiers stopped. Every single one of them. Then, slowly, the entire army knelt. Daniel blinked. Lyra. Why is an alien army kneeling to you? Lyra turned toward him. Her voice calm. Her posture regal. I told you my life was complicated. Daniel stared. Complicated how? Lyra looked at the kneeling soldiers. Then back at the human medic who had saved her life. I am Lyra Valais, Queen of the Zirath Dominion. The commander of the most powerful army in the galaxy. Daniel's brain stopped for about 3 seconds. Then he said the only thing he could think of. Well, that explains a lot. Lyra smiled for the first time since he had met her. A real smile. Not a warrior's mask. And in that moment, the most powerful queen in the galaxy realized something extraordinary. The one person who had changed her life forever was not a king, not a general, not a conqueror, just a human who believed that every life mattered, and that belief might one day change the entire galaxy.